You're listening to another episode of the Just Go Bike podcast. That's AKA Murph.
And that's AP. And this is the podcast where we talk about cycling just for the fun of it, with tales from all over the nation. Come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile. Well, hey there, AP.
Hi, Murph.
How's it going?
Oh, fantastic. I know we try not to talk about weather on the show, but today is literally perfect for cycling.
It's
so
amazing.
Time to get out there and get your RAGBRAI miles in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting down to the wire here, and it's time to start training. I was talking to my brother over the 4th of July weekend, and he has not trained yet. And I said, brother, it's time.
We're only a couple weeks away from RAGBRAI at this point.
Yeah, I think he's a glutton for punishment, though. So, Murph, why did the bicycle fall over?
I don't know. Why did the bicycle fall over?
Because it was too tired. What's your favorite bicycle related joke or funny story?
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, that's definitely a joke that I've heard before. I don't know if I remember it, but how about how did the barber win the bike race?
I don't know how.
He took a shortcut. We're hilarious, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of hilarious, we're going to be asking you, the listeners, for your RAGBRAI cycling stories. And this is going to be coming up in a few weeks. So this is your teaser. So we're looking for extremely short and not too dark of stories. So
start thinking about the stories that you have that you might be able to share with us at the Just Go Bike podcast booth in the Expo in Sioux City, and then in every overnight town along the way. We're going to be there recording podcasts, and we're going to be wanting to hear your stories about RAGBRAI or cycling or anything related. Maybe funny, maybe a little bit dark, maybe corny, certainly corny, but try to keep it clean.
And jokes too, right? Like the ones that we shared. I mean, if you have all those things, so.
I'm a sucker for a dad joke. So
that is true. I love hearing stories. I tested this out with my bike club last night, and it was pretty funny to hear the different stories people had that were RAGBRAI related and funny, but not too revealing.
Yeah. So, Murph, do you have an example that you could share with the listeners so maybe they can start thinking of ideas of their own?
Yes. Okay, I do have one. Okay. So this one's more of a confession, and please don't judge me. I'm putting it out there.
I already judged you long ago.
But this is many, many years ago. I used to do RAGBRAI on a bus with a team, and there was a time a bunch of us girls decided to sag into the overnight town on our bus. And so before we got on the bus, everyone was kind of gathered around. We're probably drinking beer in whatever town we were in. And one of our team members, who maybe, let's just say, wasn't the most popular guy, he made some sort of comment about how he expected his tent to be put up and his bed ready for him when he got to camp, because he was biking instead of sagging. And, of course, we all jumped in the bus, and everyone was like rubbed the wrong way, I guess you'd say. So we get to our camp, we put up our tents, and we still had enough time and energy. We're like, you know what? We're going to put up this guy's tent for him. And you might think that that was a very nice gesture, but we accidentally, on purpose, put his tent directly over a bunch of tree roots in the yard we were staying in. So, and am I sorry today?Maybe a little bit, but this guy, he came in well after dark, right? So we didn't really see him until the next morning, and he was kind of sheepishly like, hey, thanks guys for putting up my tent. But we also heard him later that day grumbling about, whoever picked that yard to camp in, was kind of a bad choice, because he had all kinds of bumps and lumps underneath his tent. So we got such a good laugh about it. And needless to say, that guy was not on our team after that year.
That's awesome. That's an excellent story. That's exactly the kind of thing I want to know what it's like to be you on the ride, and tell me something funny, like, what is it like? I can't bike on RAGBRAI. I want to hear what it was like for you to bike on RAGBRAI. And I don't want to hear you complaining unless you keep it light,
Oh, exactly. Yeah, we're looking for
Yeah.
fun stories, entertaining, from what you've experienced on a RAGBRAI or even the day before, because we're going to be podcasting every day while we're on the RAGBRAI route. So this is going to be exciting.
Yeah. Yep. I'm so pumped. We're going to be recording podcasts in front of an audience every day and from our booth. We just approved the artwork for the booth and the tent. So we're going to have a fully branded tent. We're going to be right next to Primal every day. And Big Grove. So we should be pretty easy to spot.
We are so excited.
I know, we're so excited. Speaking of excited, who do we have on the show today?
Yes, equally exciting is our guest today. It is Marley Blonsky from All Bodies on Bikes.
Oh, no way. She's so awesome. Have you seen the short film that she did?
Oh my gosh, yes. So listeners, if you haven't watched this short film, it's called All Bodies on Bike. It was done by the folks at Shimano, and it's short. I think it's like 15 minutes or less, but well worth your time.
Yeah, you can easily find it on YouTube. Absolutely. Go if you haven't seen it, go watch it right now.
Yes.
And Marley and Shimano will be on the ride this year on RAGBRAI. So hopefully we'll be hearing more from them beyond the podcast. This is a great teaser for what's to come.
For sure. And Marley is the co-founder of All Bodies on Bikes, and their main focus is body size inclusion within the cycling industry, which I think is just really, really cool.
So cool and so important. I mean, I hope that every cyclist will feel welcome and included in the sport that I love, and I love that she's promoting that. And it's really sad that some people don't feel that. I hope that her work makes a huge impact, because I want everyone to feel as embraced by the sport as I do. She's a big time adventure cyclist. She does all sorts of crazy adventures in addition to her advocacy. And so she's just a really cool person. I saw recently on her Instagram, she got a tattoo of a porta potty.
I know.
So she has a fantastic sense of humor.
Yes.
And of course she advocates for All Bodies on Bikes, which is an amazing cause. So
yes. And that film we were referring to came out in 2021. And it was actually before 2021. It was when I first started the Morphology podcast. So episode 7, I interviewed Marley's co-founder. Her name is Kailey Kornhauser, and she had appeared in an article about body positivity in Bicycling magazine. So I interviewed Kailey, and then in 2021, they made this film together, Kailey and Marley with Shimano, and the rest is history. I mean, they are blowing it up as far as working with cycling industry to become, size inclusive, and just, getting different adventures set up across the United States. So it's a great cause, and they're both really good people.
Yeah. Well, I want to chat on about it for ages, but I think we should let Marley tell the story. So I can't wait to hear more in your interview.
Awesome. Well, let's get to it. Here's my interview with Marley Blonsky. All right, a very warm welcome to Marley Blonsky. Hey, Marley.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast to let RAGBRAI riders listen to your story and hear about you.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Good. Well, we're going to get into all kinds of different things, but I wanted to at least address that you describe yourself, and you actually list this on your website as a fat adventure cyclist, an advocate, and an influencer. And I absolutely love that title, because it probably doesn't encompass all of who you are, but wow, that right away I read that and I'm like, I need to know more about this woman.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about this a lot, so people have probably heard something around this, but I use fat just as a neutral descriptor.
Mm-hmm.
It's my body type. And if I describe myself like that, then it's not harmful when somebody else does. So kind of just like reclaiming that power. The adventure cycling part, I mean, I love to go on bike adventures. I'm planning some bike packing trips right now for after RAGBRAI. And if I could just like do that for my job, I would be so happy.
You kind of do.
I do kind of, but it's funny. The more this has become my real job, the less time I spend on the bike and the more I spend on the computer. It's a little counterintuitive, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into this is how I learned about you, was a film with Shimano called All Bodies on Bikes. But before I do that, I have to tell you, I watched your most recent film called Journey to Unbound. And I was like cringing, laughing, and kind of like, oh my God, during that film. Not because of you, not because of you as a person, but because of the rain and the mud and the dirt and oh my God. So I got to say congrats to you. You know, although you knew you were going to do it from the moment you got on your bike, I could tell you were just like, I'm riding 100 miles no matter what happens. Yeah. And like, do you want to speak to that really quick?
Sure. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I just did Unbound again. So I apparently didn't get enough the first time around. But this year they didn't have the time cutoff. So in the film, you see, you know, I'm really stressed out about making that midway time cutoff. But I had this plan in my head, you know, if they tell me I'm out, I'm still going to keep riding because I know that I'm capable of it. And that's kind of how I approach everything. You know, I might not do it the same way as everybody else. It might not look the same. It might take me twice as long, but gosh darn it, I'm going to do it.
And you did it. And I'm talking like mud, pouring rain, like it was, everything was thrown at you. Not to mention, I mean, for people that don't know what Unbound is, it's a intense gravel ride.
It is. Yeah. In the middle of Kansas. It's funny. I look at pictures that I took from that ride and there is a legitimate funnel cloud in one of my pictures. And like, I knew it was bad, but you don't really know how bad it is until afterwards. And then you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I did that thing. Great. Moving on.
So we'll put the link to that film, Journey to Unbound, in the show notes. But definitely, guys, you need to watch that. But wait till you're done listening to this podcast episode.
Yes, please. I mean, honestly, I'm more intimidated for RAGBRAI than I was for Unbound.
Oh, gosh, I cannot wait to talk about RAGBRAI.
Oh, yeah. Just because, like, you know, with those gravel events, I know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
I know that I'm, like, fully dependent on myself. And from what I can tell, RAGBRAI is a pretty darn well-supported thing. So it's like, I don't even know what to carry on my body, on my bike. Like, I really have no idea what I'm getting myself into.
And you know what's amazing is there are so many people listening to this podcast that are in the exact same boat as you, that are like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do 500 miles across Iowa, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So anyway, you're welcome. You're part of a bigger group.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so back to All Bodies on Bikes. So this is a film from Shimano, which stars you, Marley Blonsky, and then also Kailey Kornhauser. And last time I looked, the film had over 265,000 views on YouTube, which is phenomenal.
It's so wild.
Yes, it is so wild.
You know, it's really funny. So there's a film festival that I kind of joke that All Bodies on Bikes is the film that won't die. And I don't want it to, because I really, really love it. Really proud of the message and the work that we did. But there's a film festival here in Arkansas this weekend where that film is showing. And we went down to the local news station yesterday to tell them about it and, you know, to promote it and get interest. And on the screen behind us, there was a shot from the film where my shirt is undone and you can see my sports bra. And it just took me back to that moment of, it was like 95 degrees when we were filming. I had never ridden with my shirt off or unbuttoned. And I didn't even think like the whole world was going to see this. You know, that was the last thing on my mind. And now like that picture is everywhere. So it's just funny where life takes you.
Oh, for sure. And it has to be a proud moment now. You're like, you know what? Look at me. I'm on a billboard, or I'm on a big screen. I'm on the news. I can do this.
My body did that. My fat, soft, large body did that. And it's awesome. And nobody cares.
Right. Exactly.
You know, nobody cares my body, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say
about that we did it.
Yes, we definitely care about you and the fact that you did. But will you tell the listeners what at least the film All Bodies and Bikes is all about?
Sure. So it follows me and Kailey, who is now the co-founder of All Bodies on Bikes, on a bikepacking trip. So we had been doing a lot of size inclusion workshops and just trying to expand the conversation about size inclusion. And we realized we had never gone riding together.
Mm.
So we went on this route called the Corvallis to Coast. It's also known as the Sea to Sea. And it starts in Corvallis, Oregon. It ends at the Oregon coast. It's 60 miles. I forget how much climbing, a lot of climbing. It was actually quite the challenging ride. But the film just kind of follows us on this trip and tells the story of what it's like to be a bigger bodied person, kind of trying to live in this society that wants us always to be smaller. So it, digs into our backstory. Kailey gets really personal with her journey of her body. And then it really just ends with kind of this momentous triumph. I don't want to give it away, no spoiler alerts, but it's a very heartwarming, I would say it's family friendly, one curse word in it. But it makes you feel good about life and bikes and just being your true authentic self.
And I would say my favorite moment is the very end, which now I can't spoil it because you said you weren't going to spoil it. But that is definitely my favorite part. I'm like cheering. Well, okay, I'll leave it at that. But do you have any favorite moments like during the filming process? Because of course, you and Kailey are kind of just, hey, we're going to ride our bikes and we're going to do this adventure. But you probably have a lot of film crew all around you at the same time, right?
Yeah. So it was wild. So we filmed in July of 2020, and that was still the height of COVID.
Right.
And at that point, testing wasn't even really widely available. And so as we were talking with the film crew about, how are we going to do this? We all agreed to isolate for a few days before, and if we weren't feeling good. So this is going to sound funny, but I drove down to Corvallis and I hadn't met the film crew. We had been on a couple phone calls together, but I showed up and it was like these 3 incredibly attractive men. And I was just like, oh my God, okay, like this is going to be a really good time. And it was. It had been COVID, so I'd been isolated. I think I had forgotten how to flirt. And so it was just kind of this like joyous time to be around other people when I'd been isolated for so long. I think another favorite moment was at the very end when we make it to the ocean. There's a shot of us riding across the bridge to the ocean, and they made us film that like 20 times, which I was so hangry by that point. But I was like excited to be there. And it's funny because it had been so hot all day long, both days. And I was like so excited about swimming in the ocean. And by the time we got there, it had actually gotten kind of cold. It was in the 50s.
Oh, no.
But I was so set in my mind that we were going swimming, and we sure as heck went swimming. I think that, and then maybe the group ride. We did a group ride in Seattle. And that was the first time that I had really organized a group of fat people to ride bikes together.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of like, this could really be something.
Yeah. And I'm assuming I already know the answer to this, but what kind of feedback have you gotten from that film?
Overwhelmingly positive. People love it. They see themselves reflected, whether or not they're in a bigger body or not. I think we've all questioned, do I belong here? Do I have the right body type for this? So I think people are just excited to see these stories be told. The bike industry loved it. The only negative feedback we got from people was that we took our bikes in the saltwater.
No way.
There were a lot of folks who were up in arms. And so we added like a little disclaimer at the very end that said no bikes were harmed in the making of this film. Like all saltwater was washed off. But I don't think people saw that. So.
Oh my gosh. And what such a small thing to be worked up about. But everyone's got to be worked up about something. But
exactly. Yeah. But it's hard to be mad about people just kind of having fun and riding bikes and living their best life.
Yeah. And I think I can't remember if it was you or Kailey, but one of you kind of defined what a cyclist was. And it wasn't, somebody who wears a kit or somebody who goes fast. It's just like anybody who rides a bike is a cyclist.
Exactly.
And I absolutely love that.
She's got this line in it that's like, I don't even go fast, and look at me, I'm on a movie. And it always gets so many laughs and chuckles because it's true. I think so many of us have this image of what a cyclist is. It's somebody who rides the Tour de France and can keep up with a group ride and looks, slim and lean. But really, anybody who rides a bike is a cyclist. If you want to be. If you don't identify that way, that's fine. It's just a word.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I think it's, maybe it's just the way that we're built as a society, but I always look at somebody who's better than me and think, well, they're a cyclist, or someday I'll be like them. And I think it's, based on what people, just harmless comments. Like, I rode my bike across the United States last year, 3,000 plus miles. And still the main comment I get is, well, how many miles did you do a day? And I'm sure it's a harmless comment, but I'm all like, does it matter? Like, come on, man. I still rode my bike.
Exactly.
So,
people just get like, I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's, it's a harmless comment, but it's still like in the back of my head going, should I say I did 100 miles? Should I say I did, we rode it all in one day? I don't know what to say, but it doesn't matter because I know what I did and I'm proud of it. But okay, so let's talk about like size inclusion. And I think this is a topic that happens a lot on RAGBRAI because, everybody wants to wear the gear for the event. And, there are not necessarily sizes available for everyone. And I'm talking large sizes, but also small sizes. So size inclusion in the cycling industry is definitely something that you're focusing on. Am I right?
Yes, 100%. Because, I think we say this, I don't remember if I say it in the film or somewhere else, you can ride a bike wearing anything. But, even thinking about RAGBRAI or some of those longer days, your experience is going to be better if you've got padded shorts or sweat wicking clothing. And unfortunately, they just don't make it for bigger bodies. There are a couple brands out there who do, and it's getting better. I think as we've brought more attention to this and shown that, hey, we're out here, we're already doing this. We're doing it in Old Navy leggings and shirts from Walmart, which just frankly isn't fair. We deserve to have just as much access to equipment and clothing as everybody else.
Right.
So that's kind of my big push right now, because what I've learned is that people are already riding bikes in bigger bodies. But if we can get them the equipment that everybody else already has, it's just going to make everybody happier.
And do you feel like the bike industry is actually listening?
I do.
Nice.
So, it's interesting. So I got to be honest, I'm sponsored by Pearl Izumi. I've been with them for about 2 years, and I was really optimistic at the start of our partnership that, we are going to make a bunch more things in their extended sizing. And then Pearl was bought by another company. And so a lot of those relationships have changed and people have gone to work elsewhere. And so we haven't made quite as much progress as I was hoping. But tons of other brands are hopping on. Velocio goes to 3X. Rafa doesn't, but that's not really a surprise. But yeah, I think, as size inclusion for non-cycling activities has become more prominent, I think, kind of our little niche stuff people are aware that it's an issue. It's slow, but it's definitely getting better.
So if you go to allbodiesonbike.com, can you actually purchase items right now, like clothing items?
No, not right now.
Okay.
It is interesting though, because like that is one of the things we get requested the most is, hey, can you make a cycling kit? And I went through this entrepreneurship class because my thought was, well, nobody else is doing it. I should just do it. And it's on the back burner, but it's not my priority right now. I realized that I have zero design sense, zero design aesthetic. I don't really pay attention to the way things fit me. Like they fit me and I'm like, okay, good, that works. And then I think if you're really going to put out a clothing brand, like you have to be meticulous and detail oriented. So I just got to find the right partners. But yeah, right now you can buy socks.
All right.
Nothing else.
All Bodies on Bike socks. Go for it.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So let's talk about RAGBRAI. You have signed up to be part of RAGBRAI this year. We are very excited. I believe you're partnering with Shimano, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Do you know what you've signed up for?
I think so. Okay, to be fair, I'm only riding from the start from Sioux Falls. Is it Sioux Falls or Sioux City?
Sioux City.
So, that's an indicator right there that I have no idea what I'm doing. But then going from there to Des Moines. So I'll be stopping on Thursday. But my understanding is that I'm riding from city to city, and it's kind of a rolling party all week.
Very, very true. And what kinds of things do you have planned with Shimano?
We're nailing it down right now. The first thing to be aware of is the expo. I will be at the Shimano Expo booth with All Bodies on Bike swag and some fun giveaways from 1 to 3 on Saturday before the ride starts. And then we are working right now to figure out an All Bodies on Bikes day where we would kind of meet up informally and ride together for anybody who wants to. This year is kind of a test the waters, see what it's all about, and then hopefully next year come back and do a much bigger activation with our chapters and more people and maybe have a group camp area. But this year it's kind of a test the waters, see what it's all about, and how we can be more involved for next year.
Okay. And you briefly touched on the fact that you have chapters. Will you get into that?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that people have asked for since the film is, when are you going to come to my town and lead a ride? And whenever I travel somewhere, I do try and lead a ride or a meetup or something, but I'm only one person. And Kailey, my co-founder, works for the federal government. She's got a full-time job. And so we realized that like what we're doing, there's nothing inherently, I don't want to say special, but there's nothing like you don't need me to do these inclusive, no drop community rides. And so we put out an application about a year and a half ago. We got a huge response. We had like 400 applications.
Wow.
We somehow narrowed it down to 10, has since become 11. But basically, we've got volunteers in 11 different cities who are putting on inclusive, truly no drop group rides. They are all across the U.S. and we'll be launching another round of chapters later this year.
That is super impressive. And
Thank you.
Where can you go to find out, like, if your city has a chapter?
Yeah, so just allbodiesonbikes.com, and then there's a tab called Get Involved, and you would click on the local chapters tab, and we try and keep all of our events updated. One of the best things about our chapters is we let them kind of do what their community wants. So for example, Kansas City really wanted to do a mountain bike ride. So they did a mountain bike ride. A bunch of our chapters went bikepacking a couple weeks ago. They've done coffee outside. We don't dictate to them what kind of rides to lead. We just, have a minimum. We hope that they do 4 rides a year. Most of them have already done way more than that, but really just kind of whatever they want and that their community needs.
Awesome. And I can feel, your background in all of those, because you love to do pretty much any sort of terrain, I'm guessing, right? On a bike?
Oh,
like, whether
exactly,
it's
yeah.
gravel or bike packing or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Anytime I'm on 2 wheels, I'm happy.
Okay. So getting back to actual RAGBRAI, you're going to do, I think you said 4 days or 5 days of RAGBRAI, but we're talking like some of those days are 80 miles.
I'm nervous.
So, and you're with, upwards towards 30,000 other people. So, like, what do you think a day is going to be like?
I don't know. I did a similar-ish event in Washington called Seattle to Portland. It's only a 2-day ride, but you camp out at the midway point. And I remember just being like both awestruck and kind of dumbfounded by the number of people, the number of bike setups, how early people got up to ride. Mm-hmm. So, my impression is that we get up, we ride, we go to a midway point, and there's kind of a party atmosphere, and there's lots of beer and popsicles and slip and slides and pools, and then you ride some more, and then you camp, and then you do it all again the next day.
Oh my gosh, you've nailed it. You have nailed it.
Perfect.
The biggest difference is, especially if you're camping in like a main campground, is there are people that start unzipping the zippers to their tents at like 4:30 in the morning. And there are times when you might just be getting to bed at that point, right? So you're like, you need to find your people, whether you're a super early bird or I'm going to wait till the crowds go through before I start. Because with RAGBRAI, there's no actual start line. So you just, when you get up and you're ready to go, you go. And, you know your own abilities. If it takes you, whatever, 10 hours to do 80 miles, or it takes you 4 hours, you kind of can gauge on that. And in my opinion, the best part of RAGBRAI is that there's a town like every 10 to 12 miles. It's just the way Iowa is set up. So if you're tired, you rest. If you are thirsty, you fill up your water bottle. If you're hungry, whatever you want to do, you can do, or you can skip the town. Although I would highly recommend not doing that.
I think honestly, that's going to be my biggest challenge. I am incredibly good at wasting time. uh, So I think my goal is going to be to not necessarily limit my stopping, but just to be mindful of how much time I'm spending at each stop, and to make sure I give myself enough time to do the ride. I'm a little nervous about, the distance. How's the air quality been? Is that going to be an issue?
We are back to normal, good Iowa air quality. So that
Perfect.
is gone. Unless there's going to be more wildfires in our future, we are in good shape now.
Let's cross our fingers for none, and hopefully, some good weather. And I'm just excited. It's funny. I used to do a lot of bike touring, and the first couple days always feel a little rough, but then you get into the groove, and it's like you get to the end and you just don't want to stop. So that's kind of what I'm hoping happens.
So here's an interesting question that not every RAGBRAI rider even has to think about. But you're a celebrity now. So people are going to recognize you. They're going to know that you're on RAGBRAI. So, how does that feel these days where you can go somewhere and somebody knows who you are?
Oh, it's so weird. I was flying out to Colorado last week for a photo shoot, which also sounds crazy that I can say that. And I was recognized on both legs of my flight and at the Denver airport. And I'm just like, all I do is ride my bike. I'm not that special. But somebody was telling me about, a lot of folks will put license plates on their bikes that say like where they're from and their name.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me because people will recognize me. And I mean, I probably will. But I'm also, I love to ride solo. So I think that this week is going to be a little bit of a challenge to my social battery, because people are going to want to talk the whole time, which is fine, but it's going to be a challenge.
And I definitely agree with you on that as far as your battery, as far as mental status, because you are surrounded by bikes the entire day. It makes the day go faster because the people watching is great. And it's definitely an example of all bodies on bikes, but it's also a good example of all bikes. Like you've got the people riding big wheels, you've got the guys who are rollerblading, you've got fat bikes and e-bikes and, super fast bikes. So it's a little bit of everything.
I'm really excited for that because I think it really is going to be just a showcase of humanity on bikes.
Oh, yes. Well said. Yeah. And so here you are, a first-time RAGBRAIer, and, you have a tiny bit of a feeling of, man, can I do it? Will I do it? Of course I'm going to do it. Any advice you'd give out to somebody else who's feeling the same?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I would turn that on you. What advice do I need to know? Because I really don't know.
Okay. So,
I mean,
I will actually,
go ahead.
This is something I tell everyone who's doing a long distance route for the first time. And you actually said it in the Unbound film that you just think of every segment as 10 miles. You can do 10 miles all day long mentally, right?
Yes,
you just can. You get done, you rest. All right, I'm going to do another 10. I'm going to do another 10. That's how RAGBRAI is every day.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. I think my other advice for long distance, if you haven't tackled it before, is just keep eating and drinking all day long. When you feel sad, eat something. You're probably not actually sad. Your blood sugar is just low. Just, it doesn't have to be big things, but, just sip, nibble, nibble all day long.
Yes. And you will, if you forget, right, you go to bed, like maybe you're a little bit dehydrated, your next day is going to be miserable because your yesterday you didn't protect the today you.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the other thing too is, and I've heard this about RAGBRAI a lot, is that it's a party. So just knowing your limits, a lot of the gravel events are too, and there's lots of beer flowing. So just being smart and knowing that you got to get up and ride your bike the next day.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yes. And Shimano is there. They have, hopefully everybody knows the name Shimano because in Iowa, at least, I don't know if you ride your bike with clip-in sandals. Do you, by chance? Or you probably will this year.
I am this year. Yeah, Shimano is giving them to all of us, and I am so excited for it. Like, ultimate bike nerd footwear, I think.
It is the best because it's nice and airy, but it still has, the clip on the bottom. Your toe kind of sits in the sandal a little bit, so you're not gonna like stub your toe or get your foot caught in the pet. Like a lot of people will think just weird things about, it's not flip-flops. It's actual sandals that are secure on your feet. But it's like one of the defining factors of kind of a Midwest cyclist is when you cruise on down the road and you see like 15,000 people wearing Shimano sandals. So a huge shout out to Shimano.
I'm so excited. Meredith Miller, who runs the sports marketing for Shimano, texted me the other day and said, "What's your shoe size?" And we're getting everybody sandals. And I just wrote back like SPD sandals, like so excited. So
it'll be great. Maybe we could do a group photo of everybody in their Shimano sandals and just do a foot picture.
Oh, that would be great.
It
could be a little weird, but it could be great.
It is a little bit weird, yeah. I take one every year because the other thing about Shimano sandals is they leave the best tan lines.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of feet, but it's kind of a fun photo. So before we go, are there any other like sponsors or shout outs or anything else you want to share with the listeners?
If you get a chance, look at my bike. I'm super excited. I'm going to be on a Cannondale Synapse, and I just got the new Shimano 105 Di2, which is like the electronic shifting, but in kind of the more entry-level price point. It's still expensive. I'm not going to lie. But I'm really excited. Electronic shifting is a game changer. So
it's a game changer, but, on a side note, make sure you keep that thing charged.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Good.
I'm still trying to figure out what to wear. I'm not a huge fan of cycling kits. I'll wear bibs, but I'm trying to figure out what I wear on the top. Do people dress up in costumes, or what should I expect for that?
I would say I don't think I can throw percentages, but there are, of course, a ton of people that wear kits, but there's also tank tops. There's also a lot of the teams will do fun, wear kilts with crazy shirts, Hawaiian shirts. Really, the cool thing about RAGBRAI is anything goes. So whatever you're comfortable in and you can handle being in heat all day, that's what you should wear.
I'm so excited.
Yay, good. Okay, tell us one more time, because you have several websites that are fabulous that people need to go to. Will you share them?
Yes. So allbodiesonbikes.com has all the info about All Bodies on Bikes and our chapters. We've got some resource guides out there. And then my personal website is just marleyblonsky.com. And I've got all sorts of good stuff out there too. More of my personal, clothing recommendations for bigger people, and a blog that I've had for going on 10 years now. Wow. So you can read up on all my old adventures.
Yes. And for sure, everyone needs to watch both the films. Are you in more than 2 films?
Yeah. There's a one called Gravel, A Love Letter. Ooh. That I'm in. And then there was a PBS show called Oregon Field Guide that was also really good. That one's a little bit more harder to find, but I've got that linked on my website as well.
Okay. So everybody needs to go to marleyblonsky.com, All Bodies on Bike, and check out Marley Blonsky.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I will speak on behalf of all the RAGBRAI riders. We will not overwhelm you with asking for autographs, although I probably will. And I
love taking selfies.
Okay, good.
Super friendly. People should totally come up to me and say hi, because I love that.
And I will, this is kind of a spoiler alert, but the Just Go Bike podcast will be right next to you at the expo. So
perfect.
We maybe will sneak you away for 5 minutes and have you on our live podcast just to say hey to the world.
That sounds awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Marley.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Well, listeners, that is it for this week. We both want to thank you for tuning in to listen to the Just Go Bike podcast.
And if you'd like to contact us with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, you can reach us at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com, or you can also follow us on social media at justgobike on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. And if you have any extra time, pop on over to the Murphology podcast for more bike adventure interviews.
All right, that's a wrap. We'll be back next week. Until then, just go bike!